just a few hours later, there was a pause put in on the tariffs. Can you walk us through your thinking about why you decided to put a 90-day pause?
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know. They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents. They wouldn't have done it.
All right, folks. The market ended this week on a rebound. S&P's up 1.8%. The Dow Jones up 1.6%. And NASDAQ's up 2.1%. And the Russell 2000 is up 1.6%. So, look, folks, this has been a completely roller coaster week on as far as the markets have gone. And obviously a lot of it has to do with the tariffs. The tariffs by our president, Donald John Trump, when he announced the Liberation Day tariffs, we saw one of the biggest stock market crashes in history. And then on Wednesday, he announced a 90-day tariff pause at 10% for 75 countries. And then you saw one of the biggest stock market gains in the history of the world as well. And so here we are. We are in a bona fide trade war, folks, with China. We're in a bona fide trade war. Donald Trump, though pausing tariffs for 75 countries that have not retaliated against the United States for Donald Trump's Liberation Day tariffs, China actually raised their tariffs to 125% against us. It was 34%, now it's 125% in response to Donald Trump's tariffs. And Trump himself raised the tariffs on China to 125% as well. So these are sort of reciprocal tariffs. He said due to the country's lack of respect for world markets. And so we are seeing this back and forth vacillation between the stock markets being down to the stock markets being up. Also, you see the EU, the European Union, approved 25% tariffs on various U.S. products in response to the United States tariffs on steel and aluminum. Now, again, I'm generally, as a leftist, a protectionist. Always have been. The Democrats historically were the protectionist party for many, many years. And so you saw the United Auto Workers support the very first tariffs that we heard against for car manufacturers, and that's a sort of reason why. And I just have to say, you know, a lot of this type of chaos, that we've seen. This is what has happened when you disturb a global economic order of globalization that has gone on for 40 years now. And so I warn people about just being anti-tariff in general. Usually you want to be careful with the way you use tariffs. But now a lot of people, especially Democrats, are just yelling how tariffs are bad, period. Which, again, goes against how historically the Democrats used to be. The Democrats used to be the pro-tariffs party. I mean, it's funny to listen to, say, somebody like Nancy Pelosi talk about tariffs, and Bernie Sanders and Barack Obama and all these other people. It used to be somebody like Ronald Reagan who was anti-tariffs. This is what Reagan had to say about tariffs in 1987.
You see, at first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, It looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity. Now, it hasn't always been easy. There are those in the Congress, just as there were back in the 30s, who want to go for the quick political advantage, who risk America's prosperity for the sake of a short-term appeal to some special interest group.
Now, that's Ronald Reagan from 1987. Now, it's important to remember that Ronald Reagan at the time was probably the most anti-labor president we ever had. This is a guy who destroyed the air traffic control union. He helped financialize the economy, allowed his friends to send as many jobs overseas as possible. NAFTA was actually Ronald Reagan's idea, the North American Free Trade Agreement. So Ronald Reagan is actually, again, as I talk about regularly on this show, he's where a lot of this nonsense starts, where we started sending all of our jobs overseas in sort of in mass. I mean, we had started really doing it in the late 60s and early 70s. That's how you started seeing, a lot of these urban areas like in Northwest Indiana started to go down because you started seeing deindustrialization, because you started seeing jobs going overseas. But Ronald Reagan sort of accelerated it. And NAFTA was actually his idea back in the mid-'80s. So I know Bill Clinton gets the majority of the blame for it, and rightfully so. Bill Clinton supported it. He was a free trade guy as well. He's the one who signed NAFTA, and he's the one who sold NAFTA and signed it. And but it was Reagan and Bush, George H.W. Bush, and Ronald Reagan who sort of got us on that free trade market path, where we started hollowing out our manufacturing base, hollowing out our bases, and it's been horrifically destructive. So Ronald Reagan showed that he really did not care very much about what the American people had to go through due to his lack of instinct to protect American jobs. Now, on the other side, now this is the Republicans. The Republicans were always against the tariffs. On the other side, you have the Democrats. It's funny hearing Nancy Pelosi when she sounded somewhat like a left-wing politician. This is Nancy Pelosi talking about China, folks. Like, seriously, listen to her.
How far does China have to go? How much more repression? How big a trade deficit and loss of jobs for the American worker? And how much more dangerous proliferation has to exist before members of this House of Representatives will say, I will not endorse the status quo? As I mentioned, it's about jobs, proliferation, and human rights. And there are those who say we shouldn't link human rights and trade and proliferation and trade. I disagree. But if we just want to take up this issue on the basis of economics alone, indeed, China should not receive most favored nation status for several reasons that I'd like to go into now. I'd like to call the attention of our colleagues to this chart on the status quo that the business community is asking each and every one of us to endorse today. Right now we have a $34 billion trade deficit with China, the 1995 figure. It will be over $40 billion for 1996. Since the Tiananmen Square massacre, this figure has increased 1,000%, from $3.5 billion then to about $34 billion now. In terms of tariffs, I think it's interesting to note that the average U.S. MFN tariff on Chinese goods coming into the United States is 2%, whereas the average Chinese MFN tariff on U.S. goods going into China is 35%. Is that reciprocal?
So that's Nancy Pelosi talking about reciprocal tariffs on China, how we need these reciprocal tariffs on China. Back when she sounded like somewhat of a left-wing politician back in 1996. Yeah, that's 30 years ago almost, Nancy Pelosi. But no, Nancy wasn't about herself. Wasn't by herself in talking about the need for tariffs. This is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders talking about tariffs in 2008.
We need to not worry about manufacturing in America, because what we should establish is a policy of unfettered free trade. We don't need tariffs. What we need is to allow corporate America the freedom to throw American workers out on the street, people who are making 15, 20, 25 bucks an hour, health care, pensions, throw them out on the street, because somehow, Madam President, we are going to create wealth in America and good-paying jobs in America as we shut down plants, we move to China, corporations there pay workers 20, 30 cents an hour, and we bring the product back into this country. And anyone who goes shopping in a mall knows how difficult it is today to find the product made in America. But that is the philosophy. And I have to say, in that regard, the champion, and he is honest on this one. Senator McCain has been criticized recently for not being the most honest candidate we have seen in terms of his ads and so forth. He has been honest on this one. He is the lead advocate of unfettered free trade. And that's an also important part of this right-wing ideology, that it is good for America that corporations can go to China and bring products back into this country.
So now the Democrats are the ones saying free trade is good. Oh my God, free trade is good. But going back to the 90s and the 2000s, you hear Nancy Pelosi, you hear Bernie Sanders. They're talking about how we need reciprocal tariffs on China at least, because American jobs have been threatened, and this is horrific. Now, again, I'm not some trade expert here, but I am an expert in the way that these parties manipulate the American public and manipulate their audiences based on what is politically advantageous to them at any given time. This is Barack Obama actually talking about how he got tough on China back in 2012.
And we put a stopper. I have to say that Governor Romney criticized me for being too tough in that tire case. Said this wouldn't be good for American workers and that it would be protectionist. But I tell you, those workers don't feel that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Technical difficulty. That's basically Barack Obama talking about how he got tough with the tariffs to protect American jobs, and how the Republicans excoriated him for it. And he's right. He is right. Again, that used to be the supposed left-wing stance. The Democrats spent the entirety of, for many years, talking about how, oh my God, we betrayed the working class in this country and sent all the jobs overseas. And, you know, a lot of free trade did this. But as the corporate wing of the Democratic Party started to take over the Clinton wing, which then became the Clinton-Obama wing of the corporate Democratic Party, even the Clintons and the Obamas, well, particularly the Obamas of themselves, started becoming more free trade people over time. And this is how you end up with somebody like Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump has always sounded like this. This is Donald Trump from 1988. This is why I always say the one thing that Donald Trump seems to actually believe in is this tariff stuff, the trade stuff. This is the only thing he seems to actually believe in. Donald Trump has no morals. He has no values. I don't think he really believes 90% of the stuff he says. This he believes. This he believes, the idea that America's getting a raw deal on the trade front. This is Donald Trump from 1988. 1988, talking to Oprah Winfrey about America's trade policy.
What would you do differently, Donald?
I'd make our allies, forgetting about the enemies you can't talk to so easily, I'd make our allies pay their fair share. We're a debtor nation. Something's going to happen over the next number of years with this country, because you can't keep going on losing $200 billion, and yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Oprah. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible. They don't have laws against it. They just make it impossible. They come over here, they sell their cars, their VCRs, they knock the hell out of our companies. And, hey, I have tremendous respect for the Japanese people. I mean, you can respect somebody that's beating the hell out of you, but they are beating the hell out of this country. Kuwait, they live like kings. The poorest person in Kuwait, they live like kings. And yet they're not paying. We make it possible for them to sell their oil. Why aren't they paying us 25% of what they're making? It's a joke.
This sounds like political presidential talk to me, and I know people have talked to you about whether or not you want to run. Would you ever?
Probably not, but I do get tired of seeing the country ripped off.
Why would you not?
I just don't think I really have the inclination to do it. I love what I'm doing. I really like it.
Also, it doesn't pay as well.
No, it doesn't. But, you know, I just probably wouldn't do it, Oprah. I probably wouldn't, but I do get tired of seeing what's happening with this country. And if it got so bad, I would never want to rule it out totally, because I really am tired of seeing what's happening with this country, how we're really making other people live like kings, and we're not.
What do you think of this year's presidential race, the way it's shaping up?
Well, it's going to be very interesting.
So that's Donald Trump talking about, again, he harps on that. He harped on that. If you look at any Donald Trump interviews from the 80s, from the 90s, from the 2000s, you can tell this is something he actually feels pretty strongly about. That's one of the ways that I've always felt like the Democrats allow Donald Trump to get to their left on a lot of these issues, and this is how he ends up beating them. That's why he's the road runner to their Wile E. Coyote. This is why they can't seem to really just shake him, is because he's actually able, because he was a Democrat for so long and friends with a lot of them for so long, he's able to actually take their policies that were popular in their time and actually use it against them. He ran on reinstating Glass-Steagall, which was the thing that kept commercial banks and investment banks separate in 2016. That was something that Hillary Clinton's husband, Bill Clinton, undid back in the 90s, that he was warned that would destroy our economy. And Donald Trump actually ran to bring back the FDR-style regulation on it. Now, he didn't do it. He didn't do it because, again, Donald Trump generally doesn't have any real morals or beliefs, but he was able to use it still. He was able to use it as a talking point because the Democrats had long abandoned any pretense of being pro-working class and caring about the fairness of the markets to American people. And so, I always warn people about jumping out the window to say this is the thing that's going to get Trump. He is the road runner. He's the road runner, and much of the time much of the reason he's able to get away with a lot of this stuff is because he takes stuff that was very popular when the Democrats controlled the government for 50 years between the 1930s and the 1980s, and he uses it against them. And the Democrats are in a position where they have to argue against things they argued themselves for years. So I feel like these tariffs, they might be disastrous. They might not. I don't know. I'm not a trade specialist. But I will say that this seems to be the one thing that Donald Trump actually believes in. He actually seems to care about this. He doesn't care about any of that other crap except for making money. But this is the one thing he's been consistent at for 40 years. Let me get this caller. Good God, caller. You've been online a long. What's up?
Well, good evening. Good evening.
What's up?
Well, a bunch, man. I had about 20,000 questions in the time you were talking and we were listening and stuff. I don't know where to start with that. Well, how about this? First, the news I was listening to today about Australia's outrage about our imposition after they have a contract with our trading agreement, right? Mm-hmm. But, the idea of world trade or world trade being a new concept, the Bronze Age had world trade. You know, so what's new? Okay, the idea is how corporations can contract. Okay, now when you mention Reagan, you have to understand. Oh, Uncle Ronnie, right? The guy that was just said the government is your problem. Well, what he did essentially is, who was it? Friedman became the new genius of economics, and we went from free enterprise capitalism to the new market. Right? And the market is what? Wall Street.
Yep.
So that's just cash and cash service. And it has nothing to do with us unless you've got money in it.
Yep. 90% of stocks are owned by only 10% of the population.
And I'm saying not even just that, the whole routine. It's about, it's about, let's say, in the early part of the century, it had been about pro-slaver guys and people that believe in what Lincoln talked about, government formed by the people. And the idea of equality is supposed to work into this. So it's not about the robber barons or the billionaires, but the economy is supposed to be amended to ensure a more domestic tranquility. That's how we all can have citizenship and understand those responsibilities. But once you make it for profit at all costs, maximizing profit at all costs, now you have all the peripheral gamesmanship that's always been around, and the stuff they were using in the 70s, they still talk about it now, like as if it was some party issue, and it's not. And the Dems have been, look, my party's, I'm a Dem, man, and my party's been so disappointing to me because they went corporate with Reagan and Bush and the second Bush, and then Clinton went with Reagan.
Right.
That's a long, long time of those guys deregulating of things that Franklin and the New Deal helped set up for training, programming, actually, eventually integration. If you, Roosevelt's first vice president was the Secretary of Agriculture before he became the vice president, and he was running, right? But the guy from Kansas, the closet guy from Kansas, got it instead. But the guy McCarthy, he was actually integrating farming in the South. That was what he was trying to do with his agriculture department. He was creating co-ops so that they couldn't just flop, right? Everybody else is talking about the corporate value and investing in stocks and land and yeah. But anyway, so we've had people all along trying to make that, help us all transition or build bridges. But then, listen, if you truly believe in the whole idea of the American colonial concept from the 17th century, we got to be slaves. And if we don't submit to their corporate law, what do? You go to jail.
Right. I heard that. Thank you for your call, brother. It's all good. He's right. And here's the thing. Because Reagan and Bush and Clinton and all these guys have basically gutted America's labor infrastructure, unions are the weakest they've been in 100 years. Just a few years ago under Biden, we had the lowest amount, less than 10% of Americans who are part of a union. And so when you bring these jobs back, let's just say some of these jobs come back, they are not bringing them back to make them the type of jobs that built Gary and East Chicago and Hammond and Whiting and the south side of Chicago. Oh no, they not bringing these jobs back at the moment so that you can have a middle class existence like your parents and grandparents did in the 1950s and 60s. Oh no, they're bringing these jobs back to make them, they are onshoring slave labor. It's about bringing back jobs, sweatshop labor jobs. And I've worked something close to a sweatshop labor job. I mean, and it wasn't even union, definitely not union, where I had to stand for 8 hours straight in these steel toe boots. I'd get home and my feet would be killing me, boy. Seriously. You take those boots off and they'd be killing you. You have no union. You're making $7.25 an hour. You get 2 days off. You get 2 days off a year. Those are the type of jobs they're bringing back. It would be. I was working there in the summertime too. It'd be like 100 degrees, 110 degrees inside that sweaty little sweatshop. And you have all these people, it'd be hundreds of us in there. Thank God this was pre-COVID, because I could only imagine, because there wasn't that much ventilation. Those are the type of jobs that they have in China that they're making those people do who make the iPhones and those types of things. They want to bring that here, and even more so, they want to bring the factories here, have them run by robots, so human workers won't even really necessarily be necessary. Your job will be to be subordinate to the robots. And so you have to be careful when you on being too far on either side of this issue. Yes, America's working class was screwed over by globalization, thanks to Reagan, thanks to Clinton, thanks to George H.W. Bush, all these, Obama, all of these neoliberal presidents of the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. But at the same time, you're going to have a hard time having jobs that are good, bringing jobs that are good back, because we want good jobs in this society. We don't want to just, again, you don't want to be doing what I was doing like a decade ago, working in a sweatshop with 120 other people in 100-degree weather for $7.25 an hour, having to stand for 7 and 8 hours in a row. You don't want that. Americans don't want those type of jobs for the most part. But that's what you would see, or jobs run by robots, and the robots would basically run the show. And I don't know what they'd be having the humans do. Maybe service the robot? Like, the only way this will work is to have labor power, bringing back working class union labor. And we are just not at a point where even if they brought jobs here, that they would even be good jobs. They would even be jobs that would allow you to buy a house, buy a car, buy whatever. They would be the jobs that Elon Musk, who has, faced countless regulatory charges, he gives out, where his workers are underpaid and overworked. That's one of the reasons why he wants to gut the government, because he has all kinds of suits filed against him for overworking his employees, for working conditions and things like that. That's the type of job they want to bring back. So it's not going to be like, oh, Daddy worked at the Cadillac plant. Daddy worked at the steel mill and bought a new house and bought a new car and we went on vacation twice a year. Nah, that's not what they're trying to do. Oh, no. They are not trying to do that for y'all. No, brother. All right, folks. When we come back, we're going to talk about this Carmelo Anthony, not the basketball player, but Carmelo Anthony, the young man. We're going to talk about this situation with these two young men. One of them ended up dead. A tragic situation. We'll be right back after these.